everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. I am here today with Julia Fagin from Fidelity National Title, and she is here to tell us a little bit about title insurance and some of the things you should look out for. So Julia, if you want to grab an introduction or add any more to that, I'd love to hear from you.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me. I think this is a wonderful format to educate people and really understand that the agent, such as Carolyn, is such a knowledgeable person in bringing you experts to help you understand all types of transactions. So I'm the sales executive with Fidelity National Title. We are the largest title company in the entire world. So we have branches and sister companies all over the country and in certain parts of the world that really help all types of transactions go through, whether that's commercial or residential. So I'm here in San Diego, so I'm a local sales reps that's helping and supporting all the agents, and we do that by supporting them in their transactions and their clients. So that's just a little bit about my job. But I know that right before we got on this little video, she was asking me a little bit about the history of title insurance. So title insurance really became formalized in the late 1800s. Prior to that, in the expansion of the West, it was very hard and risky and time-consuming for somebody who staked a claim somewhere out in the Western expansion territories to get that title put into their name. A very evolved title insurance came through, but it was really formalized in the late 1800s to really protect people and make things less risky in the transfer of ownership. So I think that's just important to know how far we've come and the purpose of what title insurance is.
Absolutely. It's been around for a long time, and I think a lot of buyers and sellers aren't fully aware of kind of the intricacies of it. So
absolutely.
Yeah, will you tell us a little bit more about what title insurance is and some easy ways to understand it?
Absolutely. So it truly is an insurance policy, and it is issued at the point of a close transaction of a sale, or it is also used in the close of a refinance.
Okay.
And the easiest way to explain title insurance is it's a policy that covers the incoming buyer from the past liabilities of the current seller.
Okay.
Okay. That's the easiest way to describe what happens. You often hear people say, I want clear title. And
Okay.
what that means is so that the to-be new owners know and have confidence that they aren't going to inherit any of the problems, whether that's a loan or any other liens that were put against the current sellers. So that is the easiest way. That's kind of Title 101. That's how you can basically understand the job and the role of title. And we work with escrow and both the listing agent and the buyer agent and all the other different ancillary services to make sure that that happens. So we're not just doing this in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. Especially title works intricately with escrow to close out any of those financial liabilities. So apart from financial liabilities, the other liabilities that happen with a property are the physical land. So title insurance actually we cover the legal description. So when one gets a report about their property, there is a true legal description, and it has like the latitude and longitudes, and it's on the southwest corner of this street and this street. That is what we insure of the physical property. And some of the financial liabilities, as I mentioned before, would be a lender loan, other liens against a person because of a lawsuit, which are known as...
And those are things that are attached to the title that we're trying to prevent the new buyer from inheriting.
They're attached to the property.
Okay.
So, correct. So what the title policy will ensure is all of those things go away.
Would you go ahead and give me an example of some things you run into when you're looking up title, and just some things for us to be aware of, both buyer and seller?
Sure. Some of the most common problems that we see come up on what's called the preliminary title report. And we run this report typically when the listing agent is putting the property on the market. And this allots us time to work on resolving any issues that may come up. So some of the most common issues, number one, is a common last name. So somebody who has the name Tom Jones or Juan Garcia, it's a very common last name. And sometimes you might have a single man, but on the title report, it's showing that he owes custodial and spousal support. And the listing agent will be saying, no, my
That's not
guy's
right.
single, he's never been married, he doesn't have any kids. So things like that are solvable. We ask them to fill out a statement of information,
Okay.
which provides us with more information from them, and we run that report against the property address, and most of the time that goes away.
Okay.
A lot of other common problems that sometimes people are unaware of are called mechanics liens. And mechanics liens are when a contractor puts a lien against your property, maybe because there was a dispute between the owner and the contractor. They decided they didn't like the guy's work, and so they fired him, and there's still money owed. So that's a very common one as well. But we often run into very strange things in title.
I'm sure.
Oh my gosh, I could get 100 stories.
What's the craziest thing you think you've ever seen?
Probably when 3 dead people were quick claimed onto the title to prevent the property from going into foreclosure.
Oh, wow.
So somehow this person was able to get Social Securities and was able to quick claim these people using a fraudulent notary. And so it took a while to clean those things up.
So what
That's
happens?
obscure.
Yeah. What happens if you run into an example or something doesn't come up maybe in the beginning? What happens if title gets transferred? Is the buyer protected? What can they do?
Absolutely. Well, there's 2 safeguards. So typically when we open title in the very beginning, when a property is going live onto the market, we've run the title report. Then when it goes into escrow and now the buyer's information has been added to that file,
Okay.
it is what we call updated. And as escrow gets some of the information like Social Securities, we're rerunning it again.
Got it.
So many things are picked up, or if there was something recently added, we're going to pick that up before the sale closes.
Okay.
Now, if something should not get disclosed or we don't find it, then that's exactly why it is an insurance policy. And then you go through the process of making a claim.
Okay.
And that there's a whole claim process. And of course, you have to go through that. But that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
Because we really do diligence on our properties to make sure that we're providing, as I mentioned before, what's known as clear title.
Okay.
That clean transfer from one owner to the next has taken place. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So I believe that the buyer and the seller are both protected during a transaction, and there's kind of 2 types of policies. Can you get into that a little bit for us?
Sure. The seller pays the premium for what's known as the Alta home policy, homeowner's
Okay.
policy. And then the buyer, depending if they're having a loan or not, if they're paying all cash, there isn't a lender loan policy. But if they are having a loan, the lender, the bank, or the mortgage broker will require a lender policy to be put into place. And that protects them because the lender is part of that transaction and
Sure.
holding the lien against the property. So it is known as a deed of trust of indebtedness. And so that's what helps. There are other types of policy, and for those of you who are looking to build your portfolio of real estate, there's something that's known as an interim binder policy, which is a short-term insurance policy that's used for people who most likely are just flipping properties. They're going to own it for less than 2 years. They're either doing major renovations to a property, or they're just doing carpet and paint, and they're going to own it for a short time before they put it back on the market.
Okay.
And so those are the basic policies that we talk about. There are other policies called a CLTA, which are used for commercial or vacant land.
Okay.
But for the most part, since we deal in residential, or at least you and I are talking about, your viewers out there are residential, it's going to be the homeowner's title policy.
Okay.
And once again, it protects the current buyer from the current seller. And so when the current buyer becomes the new owner, that policy is in place until they sell the property in the future.
Okay.
And then once again, then the new title policy that goes in place will protect those new buyers from now what is now our new owners.
Okay.
So it's forever going, it ensures the past, but
Okay.
it's active for the future. So, and once again, it's only a one-time fee. There's no residual monthly or annual fees. It's a one-time policy.
Which is awesome and much different from
Yeah.
other insurance policies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some of the other things that we talked about that are important for people to know when they're going through this transaction is they're going to be asked about how they want their vesting.
Okay.
And what that means is how they're going to take title. And that means, like, if you are a man and woman, are you taking it as joint tenants? You could be a married person, but you're taking it just in your name as sole and separate.
Mm-hmm.
It could be put into a trust. It could be put into an LLC. And all of these types of ownership, which is known as vesting, the best thing to do is talk to your financial planner and your CPA to have a better understanding of the tax ramifications for each of these
Sure.
ways of taking title. And they all have their benefits, but the
Mm-hmm.
benefits are different for each kind. So that's really important, because for someone who's never bought a property, or maybe you were single the last time you had a property, or now you're divorced, what happens is they're going to ask you how you want to take title. So we're always happy to give information as to what those ways are, but
Okay.
you must discuss that with a financial planner or a trust attorney to get the best advice.
Sure. And so if someone buys a property, for example, and they have sole ownership and they're vested just themselves, and then they get married, it doesn't automatically, I think that's it, or just let me ask you, I guess, does it automatically transfer so it's dual ownership, or would you have to make a transfer of title to do that?
So you'll make a transfer of title, and what that's known as a quit claim deed, or a grant deed. Some of those are terminology that's used interchangeably. So if you own the property and you get married, and that is after the sale, clearly, technically what the title company will do is, when we go to sell that property, the spouse will have to fill out a form. But really what's happened is you now own it in ownership. So
Okay.
it's the best way to go about it. Must be recorded. So
Must be
those
recorded.
must be recorded.
Mm-hmm.
So the quit claim deed is filled out by it's affidavit through a notary, because so there's
Okay.
someone sitting there saying that you are in good faith allowing this person to be on ownership.
Sure.
So it's done in front of a notary, and then it's recorded down at the city.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting, right? There's just so many little details.
Little details.
Yeah.
Same thing, a property, oftentimes in California, we have properties that come in and out of trusts all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important to keep up with how your property is vested, because it's got that layer of protection that you all want.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
So do you have any kind of more insights on some issues you run into, or anything you can kind of tell me on more details into the process of how does somebody actually take the title? What are those kind of final steps if they are looking to buy a house, and anything maybe to look for in a preliminary title report as a new first-time home buyer?
So from the sell side first,
Sure.
as we mentioned, it's always best to get that preliminary title report started with your listing agent right off the bat. So we have time, because once again, sometimes they are not aware of things that they actually may have. That could be an IRS tax lien. They may not have paid their property taxes. Or as I mentioned, it may be, something's on there that doesn't belong to them. So it gives us time to clear that up, especially because, it's not unheard of in California that your house is on the market for 2 days and it's a 10-day close all cash. And you want that to go fast,
Yeah.
but we have things that need to be taken care of. So those things get looked at. So typically what happens is the title company opens the preliminary title report. It is sent to the listing agent, who then forwards it to the client.
Okay.
Myself as a title rep, I love to review my prelims with my agent. So usually within the 24 hours of the preliminary title report coming out, I'm reading through it and kind of summarizing it for the agent. And if I see a problem, I'm going to give them a call.
Sure.
And let them know, hey, let your client know we're seeing this. this is something we need to work on.
Okay.
With the buy side, the buy side agent will be provided with the preliminary title report when they go into escrow. On rare occasion, they might ask questions of the title company regarding a specific property before they go into escrow, but we're not sharing that preliminary title report until they're in escrow because it is all in good faith. I would say that depending on the time of year, property taxes is the one thing that comes up almost every time. If we're close to that April 1st date or that November 1st date, it's who's paying property taxes, were they paid? So that's dealt with via escrow. Otherwise, most of the financial liabilities are going to be taken care of by escrow and title because they pertain to the current sellers.
Okay.
Some of the often things, sometimes property lines come into question. The property has been owned by a family for 25, 40 years. And there's, they're like, well, there's a stake at the end of my property and there's that little silver button on the sidewalk that lets me know where my property is. And I think the fence is on the wrong side. So some of that investigation happens through the beginning of the transaction.
Okay.
With Fidelity and most title companies, we provide, we use a third-party vendor if a property is over $2 million. No cost to the seller or the buyer. We're going to walk that property line and make sure, it's called a high value property line inspection. Once again, third party vendor. So there's no question of, a legitimacy.
Sure.
And we're walking that property to make sure that property is definitely, the property lines are as they say, which is basically put into the legal description.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. I think the one thing for an agent to always explain to their clients or find out, pertains mainly on the buy side. Let's say they have a property and they want to put in a pool. Mm-hmm. Well, and there is a large, decent backyard and they can fit there. Well,
very hot topic right now. So that's great.
Yeah, very much because we're all stay at home.
Yep.
That pool we need to know if there are easements that run underground. Usually that's utility, sewer, any city easements, water easements. If that runs under the property, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to put in a pool because the city is not moving those easements for you. Right. Sadly to say. So if that's one of the things that they really want to know, the buyer's agent should be asking because the listing agent wouldn't know the intention of the buyer. Right. So a good buyer's agent is going to ask those questions of the listing agent. And a lot of that information is provided for both in the preliminary title report, which is accompanied by what's known as a plat map. And on all my single family properties, I run easements. So there's a separate easement map. So I think that helps answer a lot of questions, as well as the CC&Rs. The CC&Rs will tell you what the setbacks are, the height restrictions. Can I build a 2-story? Can I, even if it's on my property, I want to move the fence inward or outward, what are the measurements? So those are always in question, and that has to do with the legal description of the property.
Okay. So in the event a property is being on auction or foreclosed or bank owned or something like that, now, would you still recommend someone go to the listing agent and ask, do you generally see preliminary title reports run for those properties? Is that something that someone could go to you for? Would you give us a little insight for the investors out there?
Yes, absolutely. So the two different types of foreclosures, you're going to have the lender foreclosures, which they assume the loans, and a lot of these banks and lenders are going to come to us even before they start trying to offload their REO properties. Okay. With city property tax ones, you're buying that on the courtroom steps and you're purchasing
whatever you get
right there and then. So you need to do your due diligence and find out about, especially if someone who's buying a property like that, you need to know who's in first and second position for the loan, because you will assume the second loan if the first, if there is any. Yeah. So that is something very important, and we're happy to help you with all of that stuff.
Any changes you've seen due to COVID or anything that is any differences you're noticing that we should be aware of?
Actually, for us as a title company, it's been very smooth sailing, primarily because well before prior to COVID, we went electronic with our recordings.
Okay.
In the past, many title companies would have an actual person sit down at the city to push the documents through recording. But as the city updated its systems and we became more and more online, now it's all done through our office. So COVID hasn't stopped any of our recordings from going late. If there were any holdups on a transaction during COVID, it really wasn't part of us. I think there were a couple days in the very beginning, where everyone was just more scrambling on staff, are they working in the office, not in the office, and getting them set up. But I think for the most part, transactions have gone very, very smoothly.
Awesome.
Fidelity has incredible turn times for its prelims and its payoffs. So, I'm proud to be part of a Fortune 500 company that can provide the stability and security and protection for people on the transaction. So I'm very fortunate, very lucky.
And I know how quick you work, because every time I've ever requested anything, it's very fast and efficient and
snappy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great customer service for sure.
Thank you. I mean, as a sales rep, I'm fortunate to have all the different departments behind me that do the work, that are the data. So that's the customer service department. That is our title units. That is our escrow units. That is our, what was known as farming, which helps the agents market your property, where we're providing data. Data has become even more important in this world nowadays, and certainly during the COVID situation. It's king to understand what's going on. But for everybody listening, I think the most important thing you can do is put yourself in a position of strength and power by using an amazing agent, such as yours truly, right there, Ms. Carolyn, because she's going to do diligence on the property with all of her strategic partners like us, to make sure that your property is ready to be sold, or if you're using her as a buyer's agent, ready to find the best appropriate transaction and have it run smoothly for you, so you have no headaches. Especially if you're a first-time home buyer, you're going to need a little bit more hand-holding than someone who's been through it multiple times.
Absolutely.
So rest assured, you're in good hands with her. She's a doll. She's worked so diligent, and she's so professional. That's what I like about her.
Thank you.
So,
well, thank you very much for your time. I know, I really appreciate it. I am just going to timestamp this. It is Friday, May 29th. I say that because we are going through so many changes. If there were something to change, I just want to mark that. So thank you guys all for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know. Julia and I can both be reached, and we can share documents or answer any additional questions that you have, or maybe even work with you on a specific property. So thank you, Julia. I appreciate it. And I hope you have a great weekend.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.